your consciousness, your awareness, your discernment, your expression, your expansion, your recreation.
So when David Cates bowed out, I decided to slip in to his spot here. I wasn't going to present because I was assisting Reed. But it was such a perfect, sweet little opening that I decided to fill it. And I decided that instead of having something prepared, that I would allow the conference and all of you to inform my presentation. And that's been a really juicy process of being present with the people who have shared their information and their stories. On 9/9/09, I released my first book. Yay. And it's called Reclaiming Aphrodite, The Journey to Sexual Wholeness. It was a 6-year project, what a sterile word. It was a 6-year journey. And it really couldn't be born until I'd reached a certain place in my own healing path. When I work with people these days, either in private session or in workshops, as I tune into their energy, one thing that I sometimes notice is they think I've always been like this. Glowing, open-hearted, healthy, whole, integrated. It's not true. And so I love it in these circumstances when I make very human mistakes, and especially in front of a whole bunch of people. Because then I get to go, see, I'm human too. Isn't it amazing? Isn't it beautiful that we make mistakes and that we get to reveal our vulnerability to each other? So I will share with you a bit about my personal journey, much of which is documented in this book, as a way of assisting people who think they're the only ones on a healing path like I did, to help them understand that we all have healing paths, that everyone is so amazing and different and beautiful. As a child, I was sexually, emotionally, and physically abused between the ages of about 5 and 10 by a stepfather. And I came to understand later that he had most likely been abused as a child. And I came into a lot of compassion for him over time. And as an adult, that manifested for me as sexual addiction. I diagnosed myself and essentially lived that life of acting out sexually for 20 years. 2 marriages, one of them 14 years. Fraught with dysfunction, addiction, and codependency, mine and theirs, until I hit the bottom. That beautiful place of there's nowhere to go but up. And I decided to turn and face. This was 11 years ago. And the first thing that I chose to do on that path, because I really wasn't interested in the 12-step, the slow journey of 12-step, was to walk on hot coals. And so I was drawn into a fire walking weekend, and I ended up walking across 1,200-degree coals about 30 times all told, until I was complete with that elemental healing. It's the very first story in my book about that first fire walking journey, called The First Healing Steps. There are several really powerful, magical short stories from my history in this book, including one when I was in the womb. The firewalk instructor was a high priestess, and I had no idea what that meant, but I knew I wanted to know more. So I pestered her until she created a circle of women, and that was the next part of my healing path, was to become initiated as a Wiccan priestess and eventually ordained. Belly dancing was the third component of my healing path, because I so needed to find some safe expression for what was moving in my body, this huge, huge life force, the vitality, the sexual energy that I have such an abundance of, that I was using so inappropriately for so many years. It's got to go somewhere. And so belly dance was this incredible way to move the energy through my body in a way that was safe. It was safe for me, it was safe for others. And eventually I danced professionally for a while and taught. But it was part of a healing path, and at some point I didn't need it anymore. I didn't need to belly dance. Well, I still dance, in case you didn't notice. What's what I would call now ecstatic dance. And it's a pure, delicious expression of all of the energy that moves so freely through my body. And it feels yummy. But for me, it's a tool. Dance is a tool for moving energy, keeping it rolling. About, it was 2005, I found my way to the Divine Feminine Awakened Masculine Institute and began to, I knew that this would be my path then, sexual healing. I committed to their 2-year certification program, and I remain involved with the school. That gave me the final pieces that I needed to fully manage my sexual energy, all of my energy, really, and to also start receiving the sexual healing that I so desperately needed. At the same time, I was learning to offer it to others in these practice sessions with students. And the 2-year certification journey there was still a lot of mastery to come for me. And yet I just knew, this is what I'm here for. Now it's what I speak. It's what I'm incarnated for, to do this work, to offer myself in service in this way. As a healed, whole, healthy, beautiful, open-hearted, integrated woman, modeling what it can be to fully recover from childhood sexual abuse and adult sexual addiction, to the point where the acknowledgments of this book thank my abuser. Not by name, because I would not be here now without every single experience that I've had in my life, including being abused. And I also understood at some fundamental level along the way, as I allowed some channeled information to inform me on this path, that this soul who manifested as an abuser in this life and my soul made an agreement to come in together and do this work together in love. It doesn't mean I ever need or want to see this man again in this life, but I'm complete. I'm complete with him. I'm complete within myself. Much of my sexual healing aspect of my healing journey, I was single. I wasn't thrilled about it because I'd been 20 years in committed relationships, and I was missing sex, I was missing affection, and yet I also now see the beauty of making that investigation on my own, with my own energy. And I'm not saying I was celibate. There were certainly periods of celibacy, but there were no really invested, committed relationships until just very recently. And now I'm ready. Now I've called in someone who can meet me and match me and teach with me even. And it was well worth waiting for. Well worth it. Didn't come in quite the form that I was thinking it was supposed to. But I surrender to love in all the ways that it shows up, including in all of your faces and all of your hearts. Everyone that I've connected with here, I have so loved the intimacy and small size of this conference so that I really could even though I've had busyness and tiredness, take the time to connect with so many of you, individually or maybe in very small groups. I'm now, after 4 years, I'm now an ambassador of the Divine Feminine Awakened Masculine Institute, which means I'm an official teacher. So this is fairly recent. This just happened in June. I'm the first one to have that honor. So now, thank you. Now I'm taking my work out and representing, I'm of course taking some of what I've been taught through Divine Feminine, but I'm also adding my own pieces. And I'm fully sanctioned to take that out and teach it under their auspices. And I feel so much freedom in that. I've been in this sort of assistant position for a long time in this, kept myself in this apprentice mode. And over the last 6 months or so, I've been very much pushed out of the nest. And it's time to fly. And I'm ready. And here I am. And here I am. Does anyone have any questions they would like to ask of me? Ambassador of the Divine Feminine Awakened Masculine Institute, which was founded by Caroline Muir, Joan and Tomas Hartfield, and Caroline Muir, the core staff. So they're teaching a certification program, a 2-year certification program for certified spiritual sexual educator. There's also another track, an academic track, which is Divine Feminine Awakened Masculine Educator, which is more of it's not the hands-on track, it's the writings and creative projects. They teach it 4 week-long modules over a 2-year period, 4 different ones. And right now we're 1 a year in Hawaii and 1 a year looking like Sedona is where we were last spring. It's looking like we'll be back in Sedona at the temple again this next spring. So 1 on the mainland, 1 in Hawaii, the winter 1 in Hawaii. Well, one of the things that I was really careful about with the book was not to diss 12-step. It wasn't for me, but it has helped many, many people. I needed a path of magic and mystery and expansion. And to me, 12-step was just a little too boxed in. So I addressed 12-step as a wonderful alternative, but this also offers so many other options and possibilities. We each get to create our own spiritual path and our own healing path. And so that's part of what I wanted to communicate with this. You don't have to do anybody else's healing path, ever. You have the authority and the power to choose your own way, and ultimately we all do. Just like the spiritual path. All paths lead to the one, and certainly I work with many of them. It's about the mirror, self-love, the mirror of Aphrodite. This piece about the mirror has been really important to me because I used to think I was really ugly. As a child, another personal story here in the book, my mother entered me as a preteen in beauty pageants, competing with my sister. It was hell. And I thought I was really, really ugly. Now, there are times when I look in the mirror and it takes my breath away. I get it. Like, I see what other people see. Now I see it myself. So the mirror of Venus that she looks into, admire perhaps her own beauty, has been really significant for me. But it's the goddess of love. And that's really all there is. Yes. I self-diagnosed, and in fact, when I first started going to therapists and saying, I think I'm a sex addict, can you help me? And this is sort of humorously overdone. You silly thing. You're not a sex addict. That's for men. And they wouldn't believe me. So for me, I was using sex as a form of power over. I was a predator. I was a sexual predator. And I did what I called arm twisting. Like, I would convince people to have sex with me. Wow. And I did all of this as an attempt to give myself some self-esteem, to assuage my totally bottomed out self-esteem, to feel like I had something. And I think it was also just in reaction to having my boundaries crossed. I didn't have any boundaries. I didn't know what boundaries were. I didn't know how to say no. But mostly I was in this yang expression, this really intense masculine expression of going out and getting, taking. And so I saw that there was just a tremendous amount of acting out behavior that was substituting for something. And so I diagnosed myself as a sex addict. And it's a harsh diagnosis. But I still feel that it did apply to me. And by the way, I am fully recovered. I still track myself. I still track myself all the time and just check in. We must. I am always aware of what shadow might be hiding, because the shadow, the integration of the shadow and allowing it to rise to the surface is kind of number one in my book, The Underworld Journeys. So thank you for receiving me. I feel very received these days by the people that I connect with. And it feels wonderful. Blessings. And as we say in Maui, where I live, aloha nui loa. It means I love you so much.